problem with erosion is the concentration of water. And so when water is concentrated and runs off really quickly, collects really quickly, then it has a lot of energy. And then if it is running down a relatively steep slope like this one, which is almost 2-to-1, like 1 foot rise over 2 feet of lateral space, then you get that it actually runs off too fast. And then that energy of collected water running off really fast starts carving, and that's really what erosion is. And so this berm is the problem because it collects that water at one lowest spot and combines all that energy on this very steep slope. And because this is all very soft fill material, it's not being compacted, nothing like that. It just doesn't have any resistance. And because the berm is relatively high, nothing really wants to grow in it because it's very dry. It cannot hold much moisture. So, and then it's very susceptible to erosion. So a technique that is gradually being developed to deal with it, well, there's actually two. About 150 years, 200 years ago, the Swiss in Switzerland, Europe, they built what is called a check dam. And that's basically a big hulk of a barrier, because they thought we need to hold back the water in the dirt. So until maybe 20 years ago, all over the world, that idea of holding back the water and holding back the dirt was done all over the place. And when people felt that it sometimes wasn't holding, they created baskets, wire baskets to fill. They are called gabions. And they would sometimes, even in a situation like this, plug a hole like this with a gabion basket. And so gradually what we've learned is that that is like shooting at a mosquito with a cannon. It's very imprecise and it's way too expensive and way too big. Because what happens is water that flows over it sometimes doesn't even get in that gabion. It doesn't infiltrate. It goes over it, falls down underneath it and undermines it. Or the gabion dam, gradually everything starts to erode around it and the water starts flowing around it. It doesn't stop anything anymore. So it's too hard, too big. And maybe in the 1980s, there were people in different universities and different places and government agencies that saw that in Africa, in Mexico, people had other techniques, just very simple techniques, laying a couple of rocks down in a very deliberate way. So they probably must have looked at how nature places rock in a river, which is also very deliberate and very stable. So if you step on it, it doesn't really move. And especially here in New Mexico, there was a man called Bill Zedek. He was a retired wildlife biologist from the Forest Service who had done a lot of work already in the 80s and probably 70s in various parts of the country, where he looked at wildlife habitat, and he saw that wildlife habitat was not doing well because it was often too dry. And then when he analyzed why was it too dry, he saw that water was siphoned away before it reached that place that was so good for animals. And looking at where the water was siphoned away, it was again in a situation like this. It was funneled to one place so that the other places were too dry because it didn't get their natural water. And then in one place, it rushed all down and created erosion, which was no good either. So, because he had worked also a little in Mexico, he saw there that people used these very simple rock structures, often one rock high, and he called them one rock dams. He also looked at native people like the Zunis and found very old rock structures in the form of a bowl, and he called them Zuni bowls or rock bowls. And so over the last 20 years, with a lot of different people in New Mexico, he tested out these structures. And he also came up with an entire new idea of how to make rivers heal themselves by using the force of the water, but letting it slow down by making the river meander, which is their natural pattern. And so, especially with flatter rivers like this one. And so, using those techniques, which are very simple, which can be done by farmers, by volunteers, by anybody. He came up with an entire strategy of healing land that was eroding and drying up. And with that, healing basically the wildlife habitat. Because if you do those kind of things, what you do is you don't stop the water, you only slow it down. And if you do that often enough, that water slows down over a long area, and that has time to sink into the soil. And if you also in that process catch dirt, then you also catch some organic debris and seeds, and gradually plants grow where that moisture infiltrates in the soil. Right? So what he does is basically created these areas with these very simple rock structures, very similar to how native people did it, to kind of re-irrigate the land naturally and let the land grow up with vegetation. And so over time, various groups have, with this